quiet fear that comes with midlife that we don't talk about often enough. If I stop striving, who am I? If I stop pushing, what happens to the version of me that built this life? Today, I'm sharing what I've shed at 44, what I'm keeping moving forward, and who I'm becoming in the process. Because identity patterns shape our physiology way more than we realize. Hi, I'm Janelle Ewell, functional health practitioner and founder of The Transformation Life. Here on The Transformation Show, we bridge functional health and nervous system healing so women can come home to their bodies, not reinvent themselves, but integrate. So, as of when this is coming out, my 44th birthday is on March 3rd. And a couple weeks ago, we just wrapped up the year of the snake, and we are in the year of the fire horse when it comes to the zodiac calendar. And so I have been in some really deep self-reflection, some really deep self-awareness. And as I celebrate my birthday, my intention each year on my birthday is to know myself even better in the year ahead. And for me, my birthday being a couple weeks before the spring equinox, this actually feels like the new year to me. January 1st, and I've talked about this on some previous episodes, January 1st is the dead of winter. It's really a time to go inward. It's really a time for, to kind of rest and renew. And once we hit the Lunar New Year, which happened on February 17th, and then spring equinox is just a couple weeks away, I'm really starting to feel this energy shift. And so for me, this is a very self-reflective episode that you are going to hear. And to be honest, I didn't even realize last year was the year of the snake until much, much later in the year. And as woo-woo as I am, I never really paid attention to this. And yet I can see how the energy of that year of the snake, I was feeling that, because last year was a year where I put myself into places, around people, and experiences that really showed me what was no longer serving me, what I needed to shed, what I needed to let go of, what I needed to release, and really what I wanted moving forward. And so this episode is not about physical things that I shed last year. And if you've been around for any amount of time, you know that last year, my husband and I closed our brick and mortar fitness studio, the Transformation Club. And that's not what this shed is about. This episode is really about deep patterns, emotions, and beliefs that came forward for me last year to be seen, to be healed, and then to be released. So before we dive in, I want to share a quote from Carl Jung. And it says, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And really, a lot of my year last year was me being shown what was operating on the unconscious or the subconscious level and bringing it conscious in order for me to be able to see it, heal it, integrate it, process it, release it, etc. And so I want to really state my intention around recording this episode. This episode is not for me to talk about, the healing that I did last year, although you're going to hear pieces of this. This episode is for me to be really vulnerable. And when we, especially as women, are vulnerable, we give other women permission to be vulnerable as well. Especially in a world that can seem like a highlight reel so much of the time because of social media. And to be honest with you, I may have a little bit of a vulnerability hangover after recording this because I can feel just the nervousness and yet excitement for this episode. And that means it's going to be really powerful. So you're going to want to make sure you stick around. The other thing around me sharing is that when we share what we've been experiencing, when we share our story, when we share how we have been feeling, it makes other people realize that they aren't alone. Because again, if you are not really intentional about putting yourself in community and having conversations in real life, so much of the world we live in online can feel like, what's wrong with me? Why am I the only one experiencing this? And it can feel very isolating and alone. And for me, I really learned through other people's experiences and stories. And when we hear someone else name something that we've been silently carrying, again, we feel not alone, and something in our body and our nervous system really, truly relaxes. So, this is not about me reinventing myself at 44. This is really about me shedding what no longer fits and consciously choosing what I am taking forward. So, as I have designed this episode, I'm going to talk about 5 things that I shed and 5 things that I'm carrying forward, which in a lot of ways are the opposite of the things that I shed. And I will say to you that these are in no particular order. So the first one is shedding self-criticism. And this is a big one for me. And I knew that this, I've worked on self-talk and self-love for many, many years now. And yet there was still part of this self-criticism that I could see was showing up. And it was like, much like a snake skin, it was like that last layer needed to be shed. So for me, most of my life, self-criticism actually felt productive. It felt like if I was just critical enough of myself, then I would actually do the things that I needed to do in order to have and to create the transformation that I desired. And I have said this for years, is you can't change a body that you hate. And that's really, really important. And it doesn't mean that we don't witness ourselves, which I'm going to talk about here in a moment. It doesn't mean that we don't want to improve. And growth is my number 2 value. Like my brand is all around transformation. So it's not that we don't want things to change or transform or be different. It's how we're going about that. And so this self-criticism for me also sounded like discipline. It sounded like ambition, and it sounded like excellence. And honestly, underneath it was a lot of fear. And there was some perfectionism that came with that. And it was like, well, I'm being critical of if you can't do it perfect, or look at, you're not doing this, or you're not this, or you're not that. Fill in the blank. And perfectionism is rooted in fear, often fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of success, fear of so many kinds of things. And there was also this underlying fear because this self-criticism, I learned this at a very, very early age, like very early age. And when I'm working with clients who are really hard on themselves or very, very self-critical of themselves, I will often ask them, whose voice is that critical voice? That part of you that shows up to be really critical, whose voice is that? And that helps us to really uncover, like, where did this come from and whose version of this did we adopt for ourselves? And in some ways, it has served me. It has served me with some discipline and some ambition and to create momentum. And also, it's no longer serving me in the sense that when I say to myself constantly, you should be further along, you should be doing more, you should be better, you should have this figured out, you should. And we're going to talk about the emotion that is really behind the shoulding, because that is also something that I shed. That doesn't feel good. And when I put myself in that energy, it's actually very difficult for me to create momentum, for me to be inspired, for me to be creative. And so I really was able to see where that came from. I was really able to see how that has served me. And I want to say this, the things that I shed, I'm grateful for them in a lot of ways. And so it doesn't mean that if you're listening to this and you have something in your own life, it doesn't mean that, it was all bad or it was all wrong or anything like that. Like, you can have gratitude and yet be ready to release and let go and shed something. And I think that's a really, really important point. And so what I am taking with me is passion and witnessing. And I want to talk about this witnessing concept because this really came forward for me last year when I was going through my somatic transformation facilitator certification. I am, again, growth is my number 2 value. I am all about doing the, quote unquote hard things, etc. And what was happening was I would be in the doing, I would be in the expansion, the doing of the hard thing, the pushing myself outside of my growth edges. And on the back end of that, instead of witnessing myself with self-compassion, this is where the self-criticism would come in and be like, you didn't do it right. You didn't do it like this person. You didn't do it perfectly. You should have done it better. See where I'm going with that? And so instead, after those experiences, or even just after my day, after my week, I'm witnessing myself and meeting myself with compassion. And I'm saying, I'm really proud of you for showing up today. I'm really proud of you for doing that thing that was uncomfortable. I'm really proud of you for being confronted with something and not making it mean something about you as you on a soul level, and being able to meet yourself with compassion. So that witnessing is like, I'm really proud of you for doing that, because I would never say to one of my nieces or nephews, like when they did something that was outside their comfort zone, I would never meet them with self-criticism. I would always meet them with witnessing them and saying, like, I'm really proud of you for doing that. And in that witnessing, that's where we also can say, I'm really proud of you for doing that. And so it's not a but, it's not an or, it's an and. This is how maybe you want to do it going forward, or this is how you could improve. Because again, I'm all about growth and improvement, and I've realized that I can do it in a very different way, and I can do it from a place of self-compassion, and that actually is more inspiring, and that actually makes me want to take the action again. So the ability to observe yourself without attacking yourself is a amazing skill. And I promise you that self-compassion will get you so much further than self-criticism. And this isn't about, like I said, it's not about being soft. It's not about, Pollyanna. It's not about rose-colored glasses. It is about regulation. And this is where the nervous system comes in the conversation. So really, really important. Moving on to number 2. Shedding self-abandonment. Even as I say that, I can feel my body exhale. Because I didn't know, this is one of those things that was shown to me that it all makes sense as I am integrating it and processing it, and yet I didn't know it was underneath. I didn't know how often I abandoned myself to maintain attachment. And I'm going to talk about that here in a moment. But to keep the peace, to be the strong one, to not disappoint, to not cause conflict, to not rock the boat, to not be too much. How often are you abandoning yourself in your life? How often are you pushing through? How often are you not asking for what you need just to maintain attachment? So what I mean by this, and this is from the work of Gabor Mate. If you are not familiar with Gabor Mate, I would highly encourage you to become familiar with Gabor Mate. One of the books that I often recommend to the vast majority of my one-on-one clients is called When the Body Says No. It is phenomenal. So Gabor talks about how people have 2 basic needs: attachment and authenticity. And when authenticity threatens attachment, attachment will trump authenticity. And attachment over authenticity is something that we learn very early on in our life, and we have to learn it because of survival. So let's break this down a little bit. So when you are a child, you are attached, you have attachment, and attachment styles is a whole nother conversation. But you have attachment to your caregivers, whoever that is. And so if like you learn very early on that if you express a certain emotion or you express a need or you behave in a certain way, if your nervous system perceives that that threatens the attachment to your caregiver in any way, shape, or form, it will shut that authenticity down. And so you feel as though you're not able to actually be yourself. And this is where something like hypervigilance can show up, where you move in, you come into a space, and because of what you learned as a child, you are scanning that space for who do I need to be in order for attachment. And so again, attachment, when authenticity threatens attachment, attachment will trump authenticity. And this is the premise. There's a lot to self-abandonment, but this is the premise of self-abandonment. Is I can't speak my needs, meet my own needs, be the person that I want to be because it's threatening attachment. And so even as adults, when we have resources and we have the ability to take care of ourselves, we can still be operating from this place. And so at 44, I've shed self-abandonment. And what I'm taking with me is safety. It's safe to say what I need. It's safe to feel what I feel. It's safe to be seen in my fullness, in who I am. And so this is really important. And this is part of the nervous system work that I do with the people that I work with, is when you are speaking your needs or when you are feeling something, grounding and anchoring that into safety. And so when I'm in conversations where I used to abandon myself and I used to just say, you know what, it's easier to just shut down and it's easier to just not say what I think and to not speak my truth. What I have learned is when I can come into regulation, when I can anchor into safety, and that could be as simple as placing my feet flat on the floor and coming back to my breath, because nobody will even know that you're anchoring into safety. And then I say, and then that's the signal to my nervous system that like, you're going to be okay. You can express this emotion or need or desire and you're safe. And so authenticity only feels dangerous when your nervous system isn't regulated. And this is so big. And this has been a really, really important one for me. Number 3, shedding shame, the S word. And again, this is one that if someone would have said to me early last year, Janelle, do you ever experience shame? I would be like, no. Guilt, yes. And the difference is shame is I am bad. Guilt is I did something bad. And I say bad and I'll use quotations because I don't necessarily love that label of good and bad. And it's something to just be able to distinguish. So that's why I'm using it. I had no idea how deep underneath this shame was. And so shame can often be really quiet. And it can whisper things like, you're too much, you're not enough, don't let them see that, right? And like it lives at the lowest levels of consciousness and it makes us want to disappear. And I remember a mentor sharing that with me. And this is really from the work of David Hawkins. He has a wonderful book called Letting Go. Highly recommend that. I believe this is more from his work on, I believe the book is called Power versus Force. And shame is like that. It's like the lowest level. And so this is where when you move into, and I've talked about this for years, when you move into the shame spiral around something to do with your nutrition or your health or your fitness, it gets to the part of you that says, I can't change. I'm not able to change. And so we really want to be aware of that, because if you're wanting to take consistent actions and change certain lifestyle behaviors, if you're constantly moving into the shame spiral, there is no energy for you to be able to move forward. And I can see how there's certain areas, like there was some stuckness here because of this shame underneath that, like, and it like I viscerally had it living in my body and needed to really process that. And so the antidote to shame isn't achievement, and I'm saying that to my younger self. It's actually courage. So courage is that emotional like tipping point, and it's where we can move from more destructive to constructive. And so one of the things that I'm taking forward is courage. Is, like, and with the nervous system, and it comes to courage, the nervous system really likes titration. So it's like, okay, I'm going to dip my toe in, I'm going to exercise that courage muscle, and then I'm going to come back. And then I'm going to exercise it a little bit more, a little bit deeper, and then I'm going to come back. And that's really important as integration and recalibration is happening. So at 44, I'm shedding shame and I'm choosing love. Not performative love, not bypassing, but unconditional acceptance of like my true self as I am, like the truest version. Like I'm the soul version of me. And again, that doesn't mean that I am not seeking growth. That doesn't mean I'm not seeking transformation, because I definitely am. So this is where love and joy, they're not fluffy states, they're actually regulated states. So really, really important from an emotional standpoint. Number 4, I am shedding, I have to do everything alone. And again, I like, as I'm saying these, like I can feel a release in my body, because I've done a lot with this over the course of the last 12, well, really 9 to 10 months. So for a long time for me, being capable, being worthy, if we want to bring that enoughness, like being enough, meant doing it myself. So it's like, if I have to do this myself, then that means something more and quote unquote better about me. And it also meant that being strong meant that I didn't need help. And what I am realizing is that isolation isn't strength, it's actually a survival strategy. So it's like this, I learned that in order to survive, like I have to do everything myself. I have to do it. And at 44, I'm shedding the belief that I have to carry everything alone, because to be honest, it's exhausting. And this is, all of these things, like there's a lot of emotional components to these things. There's a lot of mindset components to these things. So I was aware that I had a limiting belief around needing to do everything myself, especially when it came to certain seasons of our business and having team members and delegation. And that was something I really struggled with. And this is also where these things have impacted me physically. Like my adrenal, like the visceral exhale when I say that I'm shedding, having to do everything alone, my adrenal glands are also in the background, like cheering and saying, yay, thank you, because they have taken the brunt of a lot of this stuff. My nervous system, which is tied into my gut health, which is tied into more than just hormonal health and the adrenals. So all of this is interconnected into our physiology. And like I said, this limiting belief was something I was aware of. And what I wasn't aware of was how threaded it was, and how it was woven through a lot of different stories and patterns and things like that. Like it was deep. And so I don't need to carry everything alone. I have amazing women in my life. I have an amazing supportive husband. I have amazing family and friends. I don't need to do this alone. And so what I'm taking with me is community, coaching, mentorship. Last year I invested in, as I do every year for the most part, I invest in myself, because this is how I'm able to become aware. This is how I'm able to self-reflect. This is how I'm able to bring the unconscious conscious in order to be healed, and then to take the parts of it that are serving me and have gratitude for how it has served me, and then decide consciously what I'm taking forward. And I was at an event yesterday, and the concept of mentorship came up, and the speaker actually shared and said, do mentors just drop like out of thin air? No, they don't. And quite honestly, I have mentors that don't even know that they are a mentor to me. And then I also have mentors where I have invested and they are my mentor, my coach. Like, I'm able to reach out to them. I'm able to ask questions. I'm able to get support. My one-on-one clients, I am a mentor for them. I am a coach for them. They've invested in themselves and they have access to me. And then there are some people, like I said, who I would consider them a mentor because of how I have learned from them. And I have not invested in them potentially yet. And so I may be a mentor to you and we've actually never met. And I hope that is the case, because I hope I'm sharing on a weekly basis things that are really helpful. So the other piece of this is receiving support doesn't weaken me. That's a really big reframe for me. It actually expands me. So what I'm taking forward is community, support, and mentorship. All right, number 5. This was another limiting belief that I was aware of. And again, I wasn't aware of to the depth and the intensity. And that is, everything has to be hard. Not just life is hard, like literally everything has to be hard. And so I built a lot of my identity and therefore my life through discipline and effort. And again, I am so grateful for a lot of that. And somewhere along the line, hard became familiar and hard became safe. And so what I mean by that is, our nervous system, even if something like, again, it's exhausting for everything to be hard. It feels daunting for everything to be hard. And yet it's really familiar to me. And so our nervous systems will choose a familiar thing that we don't want to experience anymore over something that we do want to experience. What I do want to experience is ease and flow, just because it's familiar. It will always choose the familiar, even if we don't want to keep repeating that habit. And what I have learned is that hard isn't the same thing as aligned. And the question that I'm currently asking myself is, what if it gets to be easy? And I remember, this was actually, again, this was not new to me. It's just the depth of it was very new to me, and the intensity of it was new to me. I remember we were sitting in our kitchen, and I don't remember why he asked me this question, but Justin said to me, what if it got to be easy? And I'm pausing because I didn't have I couldn't even fathom the concept that things like work, business, my health, relation, like every aspect of my life, I couldn't fathom that it got to be easy. And so there's a lot of integration that is happening here. And when I say easy, I don't mean fluffy easy. I don't mean passive easy. I don't mean sitting on the couch and watching Netflix easy. what I mean is, like, the question I'm asking is, it gets to be, or the fill in the blank, I should say, it gets to be easy when. So it gets to be easy when I'm consistent. My health gets to be easy when I'm really consistent. And consistent doesn't mean perfect, it just means consistent. It gets to be easy when I'm organized and it's easy for me to find things and spaces feel spacious and clear. It gets to be easy when I have systems in place so that everything isn't manual, right? It gets to be easy when I actually receive support. It gets to be easy when I'm present and not moving into distraction, not moving into anxiety, not moving into the past or into, dwelling on things. It gets to be easy when I'm living in gratitude. So ease comes from regulation, not from avoidance. And ease and flow come from a regulated nervous system. And also they come from a place when you're being more proactive versus reactive. When you're living from a place, when you're not living, I should say, from a place of chaos, and you're living from a place of calm. And again, calm doesn't mean kumbaya all day long. You can be very productive. You can be showing up. You can be making a great impact and of great service in a calm and grounded way. And I know people that are able to do that. I have mentors that are able to do that. And so I have evidence of that. Okay. So thank you for staying with me. This was a little bit longer of an episode, and I really hope that you heard something that was helpful. I hope you heard something that resonated with you today. And what I want to say before I really close this out is that, yes, I've shed all of these things. And so let's just go through them one more time to wrap it up. Is number one, shedding self-criticism, taking with me witnessing and compassion. Number two, shedding self-abandonment, taking with me safety and authenticity. Number three, shedding shame and taking with me love and courage. Number four, shedding I have to do everything alone and taking with me community, support, mentorship, the fact that life is not a DIY, do-it-yourself project, it's a do-it-with-others project. And number five, shedding everything has to be hard and taking with me regulated ease. It's not that these things have not shown up in the recent weeks or that they are just poof, completely gone. It's that I am rewiring and recalibrating my identity to these things that I'm taking with me. And so when these things maybe show up a little bit, so I'll give you a small yet really relevant and real life example of one of them. So after, a full day of work and dinner needs to be made, I will often have a recipe planned, and that recipe has like 13 steps. And this is where I catch myself and say, Janelle, stop making things hard. It doesn't have to be hard. You will enjoy the dinner. Justin will enjoy the dinner, even if it's not 13-step recipe. If you want to try that recipe, try it on a weekend or try it on a day where you have more space. When you've had a full day, make it easy. You can have a healthy dinner on the table in 15 to 20 minutes. A protein, a vegetable, and maybe a starchy carbohydrate or a starchy vegetable. Keep it simple. It doesn't have to be hard. So it's like that will still show up, and now I can catch it pretty instantaneously and say, how does it get to be easy? If this were easy, what would it look like? So it doesn't, again, when you're in this work, when you're practicing, when you're shifting identity, when you're shifting limiting beliefs, when you're letting go of things, it doesn't mean that poof, they're never going to show up, especially they're probably going to show up in times of stress. So I am not reinventing myself at 44. I am integrating and recalibrating. The patterns I'm shedding once kept me safe, and I'm grateful for them. They're not flaws. They were actually protection. But protection patterns are not meant to be permanent. And so, like I said, if you're listening and something resonates, what patterns maybe are protecting you? And are those patterns still serving you, or is it something that needs to be shed or let go of? And just because the year of the snake, quote unquote, already finished, does not mean that there is not opportunity to shed and release and bring the unconscious conscious. And then asking yourself, what are you consciously moving forward, especially as we approach this spring equinox coming up in a few weeks? So if this resonated, please subscribe here on YouTube or follow the podcast so that you can walk through the rest of March with me. I've got some really amazing content coming. And I would love to hear from you. What did you shed, or what are you shedding right now? Leave a comment. I read absolutely everyone. And like I said, I love to hear from you. And I want to leave you with 3 things. You're not behind. You're evolving. And as always, have faith and take action.